हाय एवरीवन, वेलकम टू दिस चैनल। आज की वीडियो में हम लोग विल एक्सप्लोर अबाउट व्हाट इज फंक्शनल स्कोप एंड व्हाट एग्जैक्टली इज क्लोजर्स. ओके, सो क्लोजर्स इज वन ऑफ द most asked interview questions inside Java for the JavaScript. Okay, it is one of the most famous concept of JavaScript. It's very simple but a little bit tricky to understand it, पर बहुत ही सिंपल सा है. इट्स वेरी वेरी सिंपल. ओके, इफ़ यू नो इट देन यू विल रियली enjoy knowing it also. Okay, so let's, before we get into closures, let's first understand the base of closure. Why do we have closure? Okay, so for that we will understand कि scope क्या होता है. Okay, so very first thing that we will talk about is what is functional scope. Okay, a functional scope पढ़ने से भी पहले we should know that what exactly is scope. Okay, so I have created one video in this playlist only a little back. Okay, so that in that video I'm explaining that there are multiple different type of scopes in JavaScript. First is, it can be a functional scope, it can be a global scope, it can be a block scope. Okay, so multiple scopes we have inside JavaScript. Okay, so out of all of them, today we are talking about a functional scope. Functional scope क्या होता है? That whenever you are creating any variable inside a function, that variable will be staying inside that function only, which means if you are trying to access some variable outside of that function which you have created inside, you won't be able to access it. For example, like I'm creating a function over here. I have given it name as add. Okay, like this. Inside this function I'm creating let b is equals to 10. Okay, now over here if I try to log b, then it will give me error. Why it will give me error? Because इसके लिए b is not a variable, because b is present inside this functional scope, because b is present inside this functional scope, so it won't be able to access your b variable. Okay, so that is known as your scope. that कोई भी variable या फिर कोई भी value को जब आप किसी specific space पे डिक्लेयर करते हो, उसको इनिशलाइज करते हो, तो वो उसी स्पेस के अंदर ही एक्सेसिबल रहती है. ओके, आपने किसी वेरिएबल को अगर किसी ब्लॉक में अगर असाइन कर रहे हो तो ब्लॉक में ही एक्सेसिबल होगी. इफ़ यू आर असाइनिंग इट इन द ग्लोबल लेवल, विच मीन्स इफ आई से लेट is equals to 10 over here, then yes, it will be accessible everywhere in the entire file, because this variable is present now in the global scope. Okay, so that is known as your global scope. Now this is known as your functional scope. Now next talk about ki what are nested functions. For example, inside this function add, if I create another function, what do I mean by another function is that inside this function only I create one more function. So that this concept of nested functions also is something जो कि JavaScript में ही बहुत ज़्यादा powerful है. Like we do create nested functions very often inside JavaScript. Okay, so like if I create over here, for example, sub. Okay, new function, and once this is completed then I'm calling the सब फंक्शन. ठीक है, वंस द डेफिनेशन इज कम्प्लीट, उसके बाद में सब फंक्शन को कॉल कर रही हूँ, एग्जीक्यूट कर रही हूँ. ओके, नाउ इफ आई एम लॉगिंग बी ओवर हियर, ओके, विल आई बी एबल टू एक्सेस इट? येस, यू विल बी एबल टू एक्सेस इट. आप यहाँ पर इस बी वैल्यू को प्रिंट कर पाओगे. ठीक है, सो दिस इज़ नोन एज योर स्कोप. ठीक है, कि क्या होता है कि जब भी कोई वेरिएबल होता है, कोई फंक्शन होता है, वो अपने पास के एनवायरनमेंट से एक सर्कुलर एरिया और एक एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट कर लेता है. ओके, एनी फंक्शन और any block or anything, what it does is that basically it creates environment with its outer scope. Okay, for example when you talked about ये add वाला function, ठीक है, add function ने क्या किया, एक global scope के साथ में एक environment create कर लिया. तो whatever is present inside the global scope, it will be able to access it. ठीक है, अगर मैं इस सब फंक्शन के अंदर कुछ क्रिएट करती हूँ तो ऐड फंक्शन नहीं उसको एक्सेस कर पाएगा. ठीक है, ऐड फंक्शन वोंट बी एबल टू एक्सेस इट बिकॉज इट इज़ प्रेजेंट इनसाइड द सब स्कोप. तो कोई भी फंक्शन जो होता है वो उसके आउटसाइड वाले एनवायरनमेंट के साथ में एक वर्चुअल एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट करता है, सो दैट इट कैन एक्सेस ऑल द वेरिएबल्स दैट इज प्रेजेंट इन द आउटसाइड एनवायरनमेंट. सो फॉर फंक्शन ऐड, ये बेसिकली एक एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट कर रहा है ग्लोबल स्कोप के साथ में. करेक्ट. फॉर फंक्शन सब, ये एक एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट कर रहा है फंक्शन ऐड के साथ में. ग्लोबल स्कोप में तो डेफिनेटली ऐड करेगा ही, पर ये ऐड कर रहा है आपके फंक्शन ऐड के साथ में भी. तो बस इतना चीज़ रिमेंबर रखना है कि जो एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट करते हैं फंक्शंस या फिर एनी लाइक ये जो फंक्शंस जब एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट करते हैं दे क्रिएट फ्रॉम द आउटसाइड एनवायरनमेंट. इट्स नॉट लाइक कि फंक्शन ऐड आपके सब फंक्शन के अंदर जो वेरिएबल्स डिफाइंड है उसको एक्सेस कर पाएगा. इट वोंट बी एबल टू एक्सेस. ठीक है, तो ये लेट ए वेरिएबल आपके ऐड के अंदर भी एक्सेसिबल होगा, बी सब फंक्शन के अंदर भी एक्सेसिबल होगा. ठीक है, जो बी है वो ऐड के अंदर तो एक्सेसिबल होगा ही, सब के अंदर भी एक्सेसिबल होगा. ओके, सो लाइक दिस. पर अगर मैंने यहाँ पर एक सी वेरिएबल डिक्लेयर कर दूँ, सो या ये जो सी वेरिएबल अगर मैं यहाँ पर डिक्लेयर कर दूँ लेट सी, यहाँ पर आप सी एक्सेस नहीं कर सकते. आउटसाइड ग्लोबल स्कोप में आप सी एक्सेस नहीं कर सकते. ठीक है, सो यू कैन एक्सेस ओनली एंड ओनली इनसाइड सब फंक्शन. ठीक है, सो दिस इज व्हाट इज नोन एज योर क्लोजर, कि कोई भी फंक्शन, एनी फंक्शन which is able to access the variables from the outside scope, okay, that complete phenomena is known as closure. So what exactly is a closure? Closure is a combination of function plus its lexical environment. Okay, so there is a specific keyword that we use for it, that is lexical environment. Okay, so what is closure? A function plus the lexical environment is known as your closure. Okay, so what is exactly this lexical environment? Lexical environment is nothing but the outside scope. That's it. It's not too complex. Okay, so जो भी आपका outside scope होगा, that is known as your lexical environment. Okay, so if there is any bit of confusion or anything out there, हम इसको कोड के अंदर चेक करते हैं and let's clear that doubt. Okay, so I'll go to the VS Code, I'll create a new file and I'll give it name as scope.js. Okay, I'll create a function over here and I'll give it name as function add. Okay, before this function add, I'll create a variable over here, let a is equals to 10. Okay, let a equals to 10 I have written over here. Then I have created add function. Okay, now after inside the execution of this function definition में क्या लिख रही हूँ, that I am trying to access variable a. Okay, so just so we know value of a is, okay, like this. So I will say node scope and then .js. Okay, so value of a is 10. We are able to access it. Why is that so? Because this function is creating a closure by combining it with the lexical environment, just the outside scope. So this both the combination of this outside environment plus the function is known as your closure. Okay, why do we create these functions? So that we can access the values which are present inside the outside environment. So creation of this closure is very, very important, so that you can access each and every value inside the functions. Okay, hope this is clear. Okay, now inside this one I'll create another function. Okay, and I can keep on creating these functions and I can keep on creating these nested functions. They are known as nested functions, that you are creating a function inside a function. Okay, that is known as your nested function. So for example, now I create another variable, okay, which is another function which is function sub. Okay, now inside this add function I'll create a new variable, that is 20. Okay, that's it. Then inside sub I create a new variable, let c is equals to 30. Okay, let c is equals to 30. Now I will log it over here, that value of a comma b comma c. Okay, it will be able to access a also, it will be able to access b also, it will be able to access c also. Okay, so let's see, a comma b comma c. This add function will be able to access a also and it will be able to access b also. So you can do this also. Okay, now इस function को run करने के लिए we will have to execute inside at the end of the function only. Okay, let's run it. So ab का value 10, 20, abc का value 10, 20 and 30. Okay, now if you will try to access the c variable even inside this add function, once all the definition is completed, execution is complete, everything is completed, even after that if you will try to access variable c, value c, okay, like this, if you will try to print it, so it will start giving an error. Why it will give you an error? because C is not defined. Why C is not defined? Because add function does not know if there is any variable created inside the sub function. It does not create any environment with the inside scope. Okay, ये हमेशा environment create करेगा with the outside scope. So we can access variable which is A, we can access which is B, but we cannot access which is C. Okay, if you require more example, then we can create a multiply over here, and then we can declare another variable, let D is equals to 40, and then so on. Okay, so nested functions is this concept, is that add function is defined inside sub function. This is known as nested functions. किसी function को आप किसी दूसरे function के अंदर define करो, उसी में execute करो, this is known as nested functions. Function inside a function. Okay, that is known as a nested function. Okay, then comes is what is functional scope. जो भी function के अंदर define होता है, that is available only and only inside that function. Okay, that is why this variable which is defined inside sub function will be available only and only inside sub function. It will not be available outside. Okay, but then comes this closure, is that whatever available is this variable that is present over here, since this function सब भी इसी function का part है, इसलिए वो variable भी यहाँ पर accessible होगा. Okay, so that is what is known as closure. Always remember, closure जो होता है वो function plus lexical environment होता है. Lexical environment क्या होता है? जो कि outside का scope होता है. ठीक है, तो जो भी किसी function का outside का scope होगा, either it is a global scope और या कोई parent functional scope या जो भी है, that is known as your lexical environment. Okay, so this combination of function plus lexical environment is known as your closure. Okay, closure ही basically आपको help करता है आपके variables को, values को, सबको access करने के अंदर. ठीक है, so it is extremely important concept. So far अगर हम लोगों ने पिछले 3 महीने में अगर जो भी HTML, CSS, JavaScript अगर हम लोगों ने पढ़ा है, so this is so far the most important concept of JavaScript. Okay, it is that much important. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.